Okay, Chris Fix back here today with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we got attorney Paul Whitehurst with us. Paul currently has a lawsuit, I believe, against the Alabama Public Service Commission because they did not allow him a hearing after making a complaint. Is that true, Paul, or can you walk us through that?
Sure. My wife and I put solar on our law office building. It's going almost 3 years now. And back at the end of 2023, I filed a complaint with the Public Service Commission because of the rates that Alabama Power Company was charging us and the rates they were paying us for the solar that we were selling back were horrendous, I guess is the best way I can describe it. And the Public Service Commission, I read the statute, it says they're required to give us a hearing on our petition in 90 days, and they didn't do anything. They basically said our petition didn't state a basis for having a hearing. And so I contacted them back again this spring and asked them to make a decision about it. So they set it for their August meeting of the PSC. And at that meeting, they decided to dismiss our petition. So we filed an appeal to the Montgomery County Circuit Court, and that's where the case is now. I recently filed a motion asking for the court to rule in our favor and send it back to the PSC with the order for them to hold a hearing.
So they set it on their calendar.
Well,
You prepared your case and brought your evidence and whatever witnesses you had to the hearing, and they decided at the hearing they weren't going to have a hearing. That, tough luck. Am I
well,
understanding this correct?
we never had a hearing.
Yeah.
They
But you were on the
basically,
calendar. They just never actually held the hearing.
well, we were on the calendar to decide whether they would let us have a hearing,
Oh,
and they just dismissed our case without a
Did
hearing.
they give you a reason why?
Basically, and it's in that brief that I sent you, Christopher. Basically, they said that the the rates that the power company charges were presumed correct, and it looked like they were charging us what the buy rates were. So sorry, I
but
guess.
but it's the Public Service Commission that sets those rates. Am I correct?
Uh, I don't want to say you're correct or not. My understanding of how it works is that uh, rather than the public service quote setting the rates and having a hearing and all that kind of stuff, that the power company basically files their rates with the PSC and they're approved or whatever. I don't know how extensive all that is. I'm not a public service, a PSC lawyer, so I don't really know how all that works.
You say that you're thinking that basically it's a rubber stamp from the PSC, the power company.
That might be a too loaded way to put it. I have no idea. All I know is they filed their rates, and this all changed back in the 80s. It used to be that they would file a petition asking for a rate change, and they would have hearings and stuff like that. And then the legislature changed it where it was more streamlined, I guess is the best I can describe it. So they don't really have to have rate hearings for every time the PSC, I mean, Alabama Power files something.
Or, I know you understand it, but for folks that don't have solar and haven't heard this argument before, Could you briefly go through how, when you install solar to the building, how it's supposed to be handled under Alabama law with, your excess energy, and then, your when the solar is not on, you buying power, and just exactly how this all works?
Well, let me clarify now. I'm talking from my experience as a small business owner where my office is open during the daytime. And so I use power when the sun is up, except for a little bit in the morning where I have batteries. And so I really can't. I know a lot of the issues in this country for solar relate to residential solar, which I can't really comment from any experience on that. Uh, in obviously in residential solar, most of the energy use, electricity use is after the sun goes down. So, it's a completely different thing from what I'm dealing with. But in my situation, what happens is uh, the sun comes up. Well, before the sun comes up, the office opens up. I have batteries that get me going till, you know, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, something like that. And then the sun kicks in and runs my power the rest of the day. And any excess power after the batteries are charged goes to back to Alabama Power Company. And so, like for example, the the month of November, and I sent Christopher the bill. The month of November, I used almost no power from the power company. Uh, it's I bought in power. They bill you by what's called a kilowatt hour. So uh, I bought 13 watt hours of electricity from the power company in November. And basically, all that was for is to synchronize the inverter so that the inverter's in phase with the power cycles in the grid. And to give you an example, 13 kilowatt hours is the equivalent of running a 20-watt bulb for the whole month. That's it. So, but at the same time in November, I sold them over 700 kilowatt hours of electricity. So, do the math, but it's well over 50 times how much I bought from them. And I ended up still having a bill of $62. I'm essentially paying them to buy my electricity. I mean, to take my free electricity.
So
Now that let me say
so let me understand this right. You sold them 700 kilowatts of electricity, kilowatt hours,
kilowatt hours, yes.
and you used 30 kilowatt hours,
13.
13
13.
kilowatt hours.
Yes.
So so it was a net gain if we were just trading power of what, 687 kilowatt hours.
But well,
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
over
basically
700.
it's a plus 687 kilowatt hours. So if your kilowatt hour cost as much as what they're paying you, then you would have had a big check. Instead, you actually owed them money, even though you owed them $50 and you gave them 687 kilowatt hours or 700 kilowatt hours.
That's the nature of my beef.
What's that?
Understood.
That math doesn't even make sense, man. How's that possible?
Well, and you read the brief, Christopher, but basically my example was they get you going and coming. So, they don't pay you much for what they buy from you, and then they have all these fees to where they eat up everything that you buy from. They eat up what they would pay you, so you don't really get anything.
Then they turn around and sell that 700 kilowatt hours to me and Christopher and general public, and I bet we're paying a lot more than you got paid.
I'm just making a wild guess, but yes.
Now, don't you have a tax too, like for the solar panels that you're using?
You mean a tax credit?
Yeah.
I think he's
you're talking
talking
about
about
the tax
the
benefits?
fee.
Yeah. The fees.
There's a
I'm,
fee in Alabama for residential anyway
Oh, okay.
well,
that they
here's what
pay,
here's what
for the
Christopher's talking
power that
about.
they might need if the sun's not shining today.
That's it's called a capacity reservation charge, and the idea is that at some point you might need the full amount of power to run your office, and so we have to build that capacity into our system. Whether that's the those numbers, in my opinion, are just made up. But essentially, they charge me $5 for every uh, kilowatt that they think I might use at some point. So, for
If you
example,
didn't have the solar panels.
yes. And so, for example, back in December of last year, I replaced my air conditioner, which was the main power usage. And the back when I had the old 30-year-old air conditioner, at some point during that time, I used 9,000 kilowatts. So they calculate uh, the reservation capacity charge, and it's almost $50 calculated based on that 9,000 kilowatts, and that eats up a good chunk of it. But like everybody else, they charge me a flat fee of $25 for the privilege of having an account with them. That eats up, a chunk of it. They actually charge me 90 cents for the privilege of selling them my power. I sent Christopher the November bill so he can look at it and see where it's all itemized. But
They charge you 90 cents for selling them your power?
well, that's right. The $25 is what they charge me as a flat rate just to have an account with them to buy power. But then there's actually a 90-cent charge for a flat rate to have an account to sell power. Yeah.
So if they rule in your favor and they send it back to the PSC, what are you hoping to? Are you hoping they're going to get an open rate hearing? So,
Well, here's what I'm really trying to do here. Uh, I'm looking at what I do is a good business model for small businesses. Because you're not you have a pretty regular source of electricity to run your business, particularly businesses like me that are running during the daytime. You're taking demand off of the power company really when they're in the highest demand time during the summer when the air conditioner is blazing because the sun is up. So we're taking that demand away from the power company, which lessens what they have to provide. We're shifting the cost of the new capacity to small business owners who are going to benefit from this. And so it's really just a win-win situation for small business owners like me, for the PSC to encourage other small business owners to do this, rather than depend on the monopoly that is the Alabama power company. So that's, my main objective is to sell this to the Public Service Commission because in Alabama, the demand for electricity is just going to increase. And we can keep paying the power company, or we can shift that demand, that increased production to small businesses like me who are open in the daytime, who can generate excess power, and that way you don't have to depend. Well, Alabama Power doesn't have to keep expanding their production.
Mr. Whitehurst, have you talked with any of the commissioners off the record, maybe privately when they're out at campaign events or anything?
Well, let me say this. I'm an attorney, and Cynthia Allman, the new president of the Public Service Commission, is an attorney in my town. We're friends, although all attorneys really are friends with each other. But I haven't really talked to Cynthia about it. There's another lawyer who's, I think, is Chip Beaker's son-in-law. And I guess back when this all started, I had a few conversations with him, the lawyer, about, discussing this with his father-in-law, but we never really took it that far. So no, to answer your question, I really haven't.
Mr. Whitehurst, are you hoping that go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I would love to sit down with him, but I don't know how all this works.
Do you think this will lead to open rate hearings across the board?
Well, here's the deal. The way and this is my biggest beef for the Public Service Commission. The statute that I'm going under says that if a customer files a written complaint, that the Public Service Commission has to provide them a hearing within 90 days. And not only did they never provide me a hearing, and there's no provision of the statute for dismissing a complaint. It says, and it's in that brief that I sent you, Christopher. It says in black and white, you got to hold a hearing within 90 days. So I'm real curious if they ever actually give hearings to anybody. I don't know. I'm guessing I'm not the only person who's ever filed a written complaint with the PSC, but just the experience I've had kind of suggests that they probably don't give hearings. I don't know. All I'm asking is to just, in my one case, let me tell what my experience is and show how this is good for the people in Alabama, and hope the Public Service Commission will agree with it.
So you're not asking for the formal rate hearings about residential and commercial and all that. All you're asking for is for a hearing to justify why you're getting paid what you believe to be less than the market rate for the power that you are selling Alabama Power.
Basically, but obviously if they set an example with me, then they'll have to do it with everybody else in the same situation. So I guess I'm really trying to ultimately thinking that if they set up a rate schedule for somebody like me, a small business who gets most of their, virtually all of their power really from the sun and sells far more power back than they buy, that, they set up a rate schedule for somebody like me, then they'll have to do it, or, they should do it for everybody else. So
how much did it cost you?
It will encourage other people to do what I'm doing.
How much did it cost you to install the solar? Is it even are you making a return on it, or for your investment?
Well, in my opinion, that's the question Alabama Power Company wants you to ask because, uh, they want to uh, convince you that it's cheaper to buy solar power. Essentially, part of their electricity is solar power. To buy their solar power from them rather than do it yourself. In other words, they want to keep the monopoly on solar power. But uh, the answer to your question, I spent I think $62,500 to set all this up, and roughly that's about 30,000. Well, about half of it is for the materials, and half of it's for the labor and overhead and that kind of stuff. So I mean, I don't think any small business 62,000 is going to kill them. In fact, I think from the standpoint of new construction, because I have a well insulated building, all LED lights in it, the typical office equipment, which doesn't draw very much power. Now I've got a, pretty efficient air conditioner, and my building's well insulated, and I use gas heat. So, uh, a new construction, that's just, why wouldn't you just do that? Uh, but even, retrofitting it like an old building, I think, I think you should look at it that it's not a question of getting when you're going to get the money back, because you're getting the money back by increasing the value of the building. I mean, people pay, they have small businesses pay $60,000 for a work truck. So it's not that. People don't ask when, how am I going to get my money back for this work truck? Uh, so,
Yeah, you're going to
the answer to your
appreciate the
question,
cost of the, since it's a for business deal, you're going to appreciate the cost of the system, whether it's over 10 years or 5 years, through
that's
your
right.
taxes anyway.
That's right. You're going to get, there were more generous tax benefits when I installed them, but there's still, regular business deduction benefits from and investment tax credits and all that kind of stuff. So there are tax benefits to doing this, but nobody can predict what the rates for the power are going to be. So, how can you ever answer your question? Is it paid back now? Who knows? And nobody really knows what what a good return on investment would be. So those numbers
Mr.
change.
Whitehurst, if every business did that, how much of these solar farms where we're taking good cattle pasture or cropland out of production would it save if businesses had their own system and they were covering, the cost of, or most of the cost of their business versus Alabama Power buying power from these solar farms?
Uh, you're getting way above my pay grade on answering that kind of question. But, I can't. Obviously, there is one advantage by having the business there. You don't have to transmit the power from Eufaula or the Black Belt to where it's in demand by the extra power lines and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's I have nothing wrong. I have nothing against the big solar farms. I mean, I I go out to walk our dogs behind the VA here in Tuscaloosa on the golf course, and they have big solar farms by the VA. So it's solar panels are cheap. It's my neighbor who's kind of an expert on this. He used to talk back like when the cost of a solar panel got down to $10 a watt, that people would start using them, and now they're pennies a watt. So, you know, they're cheap.
So, if the judge doesn't rule in your favor, is there another higher court you can appeal it to?
Yes, but I mean, I have a hard time, and I'm going to see what the power company's response, the PSC's response to all this, but, how could they not give me a hearing? Wouldn't that be the simplest way to go? Just to give me the hearing instead of, keep this charade up. I mean, that's what the statute says. I don't know. I'm waiting to see their argument. We have a hearing on it in a couple of weeks. So.
Getting back to the issue of the big solar farms, do you know what the rate is that Alabama Power pays the solar farm for the power generated by the solar farm versus the rate that you get paid by Alabama Power for the power that your panels produce?
Well, I have actually to answer that question, I say no, but you got to kind of understand what the business model for a lot of those solar farms are. Back when there were good tax credits for green energy, and there was a push for all businesses to be green. What happens is Alabama Power Company enters into a contract with businesses to build the farms. I don't know whether the power company owns it or the business owns it or whatever, but I know, for example, Walmart and Mercedes-Benz both had contracts with Alabama Power essentially to build solar farms for those green credits and, green energy labels for Walmart and Mercedes, which of course I do think it's a little unusual that Walmart has a pretty big empty space on top of their building. They could put solar panels there, but I'm not going to make business decisions for Walmart or Mercedes. I'm just a small businessman and just trying to tell y'all what my experience is.
Mr. Lawrence, are you still getting shunned by the other media over this? Because you told me you've tried to send your brief out and tried to contact other networks.
Well, I sent that email that I sent to you to about a little over a dozen media sources in Alabama, and it's, I got their contact information off their website, so I'm not sure how much they looked into all that. But I did have an interview yesterday with a reporter from ABC 3340, and they did a really good piece, in my opinion, on it that was on the news last night, and you can find it on their website. And also our local television station, the one affiliated with the university, WVUA, sent somebody out here yesterday to interview me, and that may be on there today. And of course, I'm trying to spread the word about what I'm doing as much as I can. So, I don't really know who all to send it to, but the only responses I've had are from y'all and from the television station in Birmingham, the television station here. And I may get more, but we'll see.
That's all I really have. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, like I say, I mean, I don't really want to sound like I'm picking on Alabama Power because, when I started this, they were very helpful, and I just don't think they really know enough about people in my situation, and I think, again, Alabama electricity demand is only going to increase, and we're all going to be needing to do what I'm doing, and we need more people, more small businesses to do it. there are probably 100,000 small businesses in our state. And, what if everybody did what I did? It'd be tremendous.
That's all I've got for you
Thank
too,
you.
Mr. Whitehurst. I'll get this loaded up to YouTube in a few hours, and I'll tag you in it when I post it on Facebook.
Sounds great.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
sir.
much
Good to
for
meet
being
y'all.
on.
Sure.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
How do I do this?